Hi guys, Jamie here from JB Motion. In today's video, we're going to be making this. So a little bit of a Christmas twist for today's tutorial. With Christmas fast approaching, I said we'd do some CGI over the Christ the Redeemer statue. I'd like to wish everybody watching today a happy Christmas and a prosperous new year. So let's get started on this. Here we go. Hey guys, so this is the video we're going to be using for this tutorial. You guys can download the video from the description below. So what we need to do first is export this as an image sequence. Now I've already done that here. You can see I've created a PNG for each of the frames of the video, or at least the first 12 seconds. That's what we're going to be working with. So to do that, all you have to do is open up After Effects, grab the video, click and drag it into the project panel here. We want to click on the video footage first, hit Control, Alt and G to interpret the footage. You can see that this is set to a very odd frames per second, so we're going to round that off to the nearest value, 30 frames per second. Click OK. So now we have a 30 frame per second video. We can click and drag this down to create a new composition, and we're going to set our time indicator for the first 12 seconds. So I have that there, so that's going to be 360 frames. Use N on your keyboard to set the composition end, and then hit Control, Shift and X to trim the comp to the work area. So now we just have the first 12 seconds of our video. So to export this now as an image sequence, just go to Composition and Add to Render Queue. Now you can set this up to export a PNG sequence, and you can just output that to wherever you want to go with that. And then once you have that done, this render button will be clickable. Just click on that and that render out as an image sequence. So as I already have that done, I'm going to close down After Effects for now. I don't need to save that. And once your guys' image sequence is finished rendering, jump into Cinema and we can get cracking on this. So you'll probably be in the standard view here. So what you want to do is click on the track button here. So we're going to be able to double click to create a motion tracker object and double click again to select the footage. So I have my image sequence here that I've just rendered out of After Effects. I'm going to double click on that. We are going to go to hit Control D, and you'll see that the frame rate is default set to 30 frames per second, which matches with the frame rate of our video that we've exported from After Effects, or the image sequence. So that's good to go. So let's just go to our footage tab and crank up the resampling so it's nice and it's not as blurry looking, and let's just hit play. That's going to load each of the frames into the cache there, so that we'll get a smoother playback once that's all been loaded into cache. I'll pause the video and we'll pop back in once that's done. Okay, so that's loaded into cache. Now we can go ahead now and set up some 2D track points. So we want to go to the middle of our frames here. So we have 360 frames, so that's 360 divided by 2. So now we're at the midpoint. We're at frame 180. Let's go to the 2D tracking tab, and we're going to create a bunch of auto tracks. Let's crank that up to 900 and click on Create Auto Tracks. So that's created a bunch of these auto tracks for us. Let's get rid of the ones that are tracking clouds, because they move and we want to just be tracking static objects. Now, they are very far away. I don't think they're going to be very noticeably moving, but we'll delete those anyway. And now we can go to Auto Track. We're using this button because our time indicator is in the middle of our frames. If we're at frame 0, we'd be tracking forward. If we're at the last frame, we'd be tracking backwards. So we're in the middle. We're going to click on Auto Track, so it's going to track backwards and forwards for us. So you can see down here that it's processing each of the frames as it's tracking. So it shouldn't take too long to do its business. And then once that's done, we can go ahead and do a full 3D solve. Cool. Okay, so that's done. You can see our track points are tracking along there. And if we go back to frame 0, let's go to 3D solve and we can run the 3D solver. So this takes a little bit longer, so I am going to pause the video here and we'll pop back in once that's done. Okay, so that's done now. We can't actually see anything has changed, but what we do is deselect our motion tracker object just by clicking anywhere here in the object panel. And now you can see we have all of our track points there. So they're very big. So what we can do is go to our motion tracker and go to, let's see, display, and bring down the radius to like 0.01. So now if we deselect this, you can see that our track points are a lot smaller and we can actually see what we're working with here. So we can turn off this work plane because we don't need it. Let's just turn that off so we can see our full shot. The track points look pretty solid. I mean, they're not really jumping around too much. There is a bit of jitteriness there, but we shouldn't notice that once we put in our 3D objects. Well, we'll first of all tell the motion tracker where we want our world center to be. So click on the motion tracker object, go to tracker, constraints, and create a position constraint. So we can put this somewhere around here, like the center of our scene. This is just going to tell Cinema where our world center will be. Whenever then we add a new object, that object is going to spawn right there at world center. So that's fine. So now we can create one of these guys, like a figure. And let's see, he's probably really big. So if we just deselect our camera for a second, yeah, you can see he's actually giant. Because our scale isn't set correctly. If we create a cube, for example, it's going to just take up the whole shot. So we need to tell Cinema, give it a Cinema an idea of scale. So what we can do is click on the motion tracker object, go to tracker, constraints, and let's create a vector constraint. I'm going to go for, let's say, here to here. So I don't really know what distance this is. I could have a guess at it, but I'm just going to kind of twiddle the values until our figure looks like one of these people, we'll say. That's how we're going to get our scale correct. So first of all, let's tell Cinema what direction this line, this vector is going in. So it's going along, we'll say, the X axis, and the length, we'll say it's known. So we'll just start kind of playing with this value until we can see our guy. Let's create a cube also. There we go. So there's our guy. We can get rid of this cube. So you can see now that he's a lot smaller, or at least the scale of our scene is corrected. So he's still a bit big. We want our figure to be the same size as these people down here. So we'll go down even more, or up, I mean. Yeah, so something like that is pretty close. So now if we hit play on this, you can see our figure is there and he is just, the camera is moving around him. So now we can go ahead and create our cloth. So let's grab a plane. Before we go any further, let's actually save this. We'll go File, Save As. Okay, so we're going to call this Redeemer and click on Save. Okay, so we have our plane. This is going to be our banner, and we can hide our figure as well. So let's now just rotate this banner. So we need to make sure that we're not in 2D tracks mode. We need to go into object mode, and we can start rotating this banner now. And let's kind of scale this up so that it looks like the Redeemer statue is holding the blanket or the banner. And let's get this just right, something like that. Maybe even stretch it out past his hands, so that looks a bit better. And I want as well to, so see the way we have like a little green track point here, and we have a little green track point here. If we select both of those, so I selected the first one, and I'm using my Lasso selection tool, by the way, hold down Shift and select the second one. Now if we turn back on our banner, and if we go into our top view, so you can see both of the points that we just selected. Now we can kind of align our, now they're deselected, but we still have an idea of where they were. We can align the banner to them. We'll jump back in and reselect those. deselect the banner. So we're not that far off. So it's this one here and this one here. Grab our banner and we can just pull that forward a bit and maybe rotate it a little bit more. Something like that. Okay, so now those are aligned to his hands, which is good. So we can just rotate that again and kind of straighten it out a bit. And let's reposition this and make it wider. Rotate it a little bit more. I want to make sure that I'm rotating it along this axis. Okay, something like that. So now if we hit play on that, that looks pretty good. It looks like it's actually in his hands, in the statue's hands, which is great. Okay, so now we want to turn this into a cloth. We want to get a cloth simulation rocking on this. So let's duplicate this first of all, so that we have this in case we need to go back. We can turn this off, hide it, and let's grab this one now and hit NB in your keyboard so we can see our segments. We're going to need a lot more segments than that so that we're going to get a nice smooth cloth simulation. Something like that could be good. And now we're going to make this editable. So actually what I might do is delete this, click and drag this one, because we have our segments set in this one. And then let's hit C on our keyboard to make this editable. And we're going to right click, go to simulation tags and add a cloth tag. Now we want to fix points where the hands are so that those points won't move. If we hit play now, let's just do a file save. And if we hit play, you can see that that's just going to fall down to the ground. So we need to fix points where his hands are so that it looks like this is actually being held up by the statue's hands. So let's go to our cloth tag and go to dresser. And this is what we're going to be using, fix points. Let's grab our lasso selection tool, go into point mode, and let's just grab a few of these points around where the hand is. Like that. Maybe a few more actually. And hold down shift. Whoops. Hold down shift and select a few around there where the other hand is. And then click again on the cloth tag, go to dresser tab and click on fix points. So now those points are set. They're not going to move. And now if we hit play, you can see that we have some nice cloth simulation rocking. So there's not much happening. You can imagine it's going to be quite windy up here. So we want to add some turbulence. We're going to go to simulate forces and grab some turbulence. Let's crank this up to like 700 and the scale will go up to like 66. Okay, so I want to go even more on the turbulence. I'm going to go up to 2000 and I have seen that the scale has been brought down somehow. So I'll bring that to 50, maybe 100. Okay, so obviously turbulence is way too high. Again, it's probably because I didn't have any scale set. Let's go back to 700. Still too crazy. We'll bring the scale down. Yeah, okay, so I think I'm liking that. That's looking pretty believable, like with regards to how high up this is and the amount of wind you'd expect there to be. So let's go with that. We could as well grab a subdivision surface to make this extra smooth. If I hit NA, we can turn off our lines. Now this might be too smooth, maybe, if we turn that off and just see. Yeah, so we do need some kind of subdivision surface. Maybe we'll go for like 1 and 1. Something like that. And also we want to set the initial state because you can see it's like just like a plank of wood now at frame 0. We want to set the initial state. So go into your cloth tag, go to dresser and initial state. Oh yeah, actually, relax. We're going to be using the relax first of all. So let's set the number of frames to like 60. And if we just click on relax, that's going to relax, chill out for a bit. We'll keep going. and now we can set the initial state. So now if we hit play on this, so it's still not great for some reason. It's not like wrinkling as much, but it's only for the first couple of frames, so we can always cut that out if we need to. Okay, so I feel like the subdivision surface is still a bit too much, but if we turn it off, then it's not smooth enough. Let's go into our cloth tag, go to surface. We can maybe reduce the bendiness down to 5. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better actually. We'll go with that. Okay, so that's cool. I'm happy enough with the simulation now, so we can go to File, Save, and what we need to do now is we need to get a graphic for this. So a cool way I've actually found to do this, so if we go to our banner that we actually hid before, we can check our width and our height. So I'm just going to open up Adobe Illustrator. Now, a lot of you might not have access to Adobe Illustrator, but I suppose what you could do is just use, I'm just going to be using the AI image generation tool that's been added in one of the more recent updates. So we'll just go for web 1920 by 1080 for now. We can set the size of this in a minute. So the size we're looking for is going to be 2156 by 807. So we can set this to, 2156, 807. 2156, 807. So that's the size of our banner. And now we can go and we can click and drag this, get this set up. So that should be in the screen. So all I've done is I've jumped into Adobe Illustrator. I've set the size of my artboard up by clicking on this just to match up with the size of the banner here that we're using in Cinema. And then I have just grabbed my rectangle tool. I can turn off the border and the fill actually. And then I've just clicked and dragged a rectangle the same size as my artboard and clicked on generate vector. So we're going to go for a peace and love banner / poster. And I cranked up the detail a little bit. Let's click on generate. I'm going to pause the video while that's generating. We'll see what it gives us. Okay, so it's given us a few options here. Let's see. That one looks kind of nice. That one is... They're all kind of nice. Let's go with... We'll go with this one, I suppose. So as this is a vector, we can scale this up. And, you know, it's going to fit nicely to our banner. We can scale it up infinitely and it won't lose any detail or quality. So let's basically export this now out as a PNG. We'll go to File, Export, Export As, and we'll call this banner. So click on Use Artboards so that it's going to cut out everything that's overlapping from the artboard. And let's just click on Export. We'll go for 150 ppi, that's fine. And let's jump back into Cinema now. And let's find the banner that we just exported. Here it is. Cool, okay. Peace, love. It left out the and, but I suppose AI isn't that good at actually spelling stuff. Did a pretty good job, to be fair to it. I'm not sure what your guys' feelings are on AI, if you're for it or against it. I think it's pretty cool so far. So now we have our banner. Let's go and create, make sure we're actually in the Redshift renderer. We are. And we're going to create a new material. Or actually, we'll click on this plus and go to a new node material. Let's call this banner. And let's open this up. We can go and grab it now, click and drag it into our node editor. And we're just going to apply that to the color channel. And now if we put this onto our banner, there we have it. We have our peace and love banner rocking. And it's actually cool. It's actually nice and shiny. It looks good. It's like one of those proper plasticky kind of banners that you see around a lot. Um, so yeah, that's cool. We're getting it on both sides. It's actually not an issue really. I don't think. I think it actually looks pretty cool on both sides. But we could turn that off if we wanted to. I think we just go up here and we set it to front. I think that's how you would do it. But if not, I'm going to leave it as is anyway. Yeah, you can see now that the back of it is actually white. So yeah, that you might prefer that. Okay, so let's see what this looks like actually when it's rendering. We'll set this up for redshift. Now we go back to frame 0. We're going to create a redshift camera because we're using a standard Cinema 4D camera now. So let's create a redshift camera. We're going to make it a child of this camera so that it's just going to follow along with it. So if we flick between these two, you can see that we're getting the exact same perspective. And we want to go to the redshift camera, go to our background tab, override, click on this so that we can grab our movie sequence or our image sequence that we rendered out of After Effects. Click on that, say no, and we want this to animate as well. So we're going to go to the little image, twirl that down, go to the animation tab, set the mode to simple, and the frame rate is correct. Click on detect frame, so now that will actually play back for us. Cool. Okay, so now if we go and we'll do a file save, let's see what this is looking like. We don't have any lighting yet, but we'll just see what we're getting for the moment. Okay, so let's check this out. Okay, so this is what we're getting when we are viewing this through the render view. So let's just play this forward a bit so that we can get our simulation rocking a bit more. And let's hit play. So it's looking pretty good. We want to get in some lighting into our scene. So let's stop rendering this. We're going to go and grab us we'll get an infinite light, maybe a dome light. And that way we're going to be able to use one of the frames from our image sequence to give us kind of a idea of our lighting. So let's go to path and let's just grab any one of these frames. I'll grab this one. Could be anyone, just say no on that. Let's bring up the intensity on that as well. So you can see it's very blue. It's giving us a very blue kind of a lighting, I suppose, from all the blueness in the sky and the sea. I'm not loving it straight away. We could mess around with the hue. No, not liking that. Saturation we could bring down. That's kind of doing a bit more of what I'm going for because it's very blue when we're just using the it makes sense, I suppose, with all the, as I said, the blue sky. We can crank up the intensity on this. Okay, maybe something like that. And let's just grab an area light or maybe an infinite light. And we can rotate this. Just select the infinite light, hit R on your keyboard, make sure you're in object mode, hit R on your keyboard, and then we can just kind of start rotating this until we get some nice shadows that we're liking. Something like that, maybe. Let's go and if you just click on these little these two arrows there, go to original size, we can zoom in on that. Yeah, so that's not looking too far off what I'm going for. So I think we need to apply a white texture because you can see the little flap here, it's not rendering out as white. So if we just go to create a new node material, leave it set to white, or set it to white, I suppose, and then apply that to our banner, set that to be at the back. So now you can see we're getting the white flap, which is nice. Looks better straight away. Cool. Okay, so I want to actually cache the simulation so we're going to be able to play through it quicker. You can see that this is actually quite slow. So let's go ahead and do that now. Click on the cloth sim, go to the cache tab, and then we can just click on cache object. So I'll pause the video once that's caching the sim, and we'll pop back in once that's done. Okay, so that's cached. Just go to File and Save, and now we can actually play through this. I was going to say a lot quicker, but it doesn't seem to be that much quicker. At least we can now scrub anyway, so we can find various points that we want to check out in our Redshift render view. Yes, that's looking pretty good. I like it. We might just click on our material here and just try to add some bit of a sheen. Yeah, that looks kind of cool actually. It's kind of like the light is really kind of it looks more natural in our scene, I think. We'll do the same with the back part of this. We'll just bring up the sheen on that. Bring it right up. I think that looks a lot better. Yeah, that's looking nice. And lastly, what we want to do is we want to cast some shadows. So we want to be able to cast some shadows on the statue. So we're going to have to create the statue. Now, obviously, I'm not going to recreate the whole statue, but what we can do is just grab a cube, perhaps, or even, yeah, we'll grab a cube. Yeah, we'll grab a cube and we will scale it up. And we will go into our top view here and just kind of align it to the cloth, to our banner. And let's kind of make it so that it looks like it is aligned correctly with the statue also. Scale it as well and all that good stuff. Let's actually pull it a bit closer and fix the rotation on that. Okay, so now we have something we can cast shadows onto. Let's see. And we can round the corners as well. If we click on fillet, just drag that out so that the corners are going to be rounded. We don't need that many subdivisions. Go for 10. And let's see now. We need to make that a bit bigger. Let's see now what that looks like in our render view. So there isn't shadows being cast. Oh, there is. Yeah, you can see there's a shadow there being cast on it now. Cool. And of course, we don't want our, so if I just turn that off and on, we can see now we're getting shadows being cast. If I turn off the banner or make the banner invisible, turn it back on, you can see we are getting shadows, but we don't want the banner to be able to pass through that. So we first of all better make this actually taller. And we want to we're going to have to recache the sim because if we go back to frame 0 here, and let's just actually, if we just stop this render, let's just have a look at this. If the banner doesn't actually pass through the object, we're not going to have to recache the sim. I don't think it actually is. Let's zoom right in on that and see. So yeah, it doesn't actually seem to pass through it at all. So I think that's good enough as a shadow catcher for our cloth. Yeah. So I was worried that it would actually intersect with the cube. So if that did happen, we would have to go to cache, clear the object cache, and then recache so that any collisions would be saved into the cache. But we don't need to worry about that. Pretty much good to go with this. So last of all, we just don't want to see our cube. We just want to see the shadows that it is casting. Hang on, let's just turn this off. Turn this on. And turn this off and this on. Okay, so we just want to see the shadows being cast on the cube. We don't want to see the cube itself. So we're going to go and right click on the cube, go to render tags, grab a Redshift object tag, go to the matte tab, override, click on enabled and shadow enabled. And we're going to click on effects alpha also. So now if we can see that we have some shadows being cast on what looks like our statue. It's actually the cube, of course. So if we turn this off, turn it on, you can really see there that there's shadows being cast by our banner onto our cube, and that just looks like it's casting onto our shadow. Turn that off, turn it on. Cool. Okay, so let's set this back to 100%. Let's just scrub all the way to the last frame. Make sure everything's looking good in each of our frames. Okay. Cool guys, so that's pretty much it. This is pretty much good to go. So we can set this now up for render. Let's go to fit window, and we can, if we switch to alpha, you can see that this is not yet ready for render. We want to go to our redshift camera, turn off the background, and we also want to go to our dome light and turn off the background on that. So now if we go to our alpha view, you can see that we're just getting our shadows and our objects. That's all we want to render out. We do need to make sure that we are turning on, in our render settings, in save, we are turning on alpha channel. I'm going to save this out as a PNG sequence, and let's output all frames. Let's save this out as a PNG sequence, and let's select a location for this. So we're going to go for here. Let's grab a folder, call it sequences and Redeemer. Cool. Okay, and that is it. So we're going to render this out now, and we'll see what this looks like once it's done. Let's do a quick file save, and I'll render this out to picture viewer. So we'll just have a quick check and see how long this is going to be rendering out for. So getting about 7 seconds per frame. It's not too bad. So we'll pop back into After Effects, check this out once that's finished rendering. Okay guys, so that's finished rendering. So let's go into After Effects, and let's just double click here in the project panel. We can bring in our video, and remember to interpret the footage again, round it off, and let's drag it down to this composition icon. We have a new composition. We're going to trim it again just to the 12 seconds that we set it up for. Hit N on your keyboard, Control Shift and X, and let's grab the rendered sequence. I have it here. Let's grab that. That's going to come in at 30 frames per second. So we can bring that down, and we can play this back. So we need to do a bit of basic color correction here. So we're going to grab a lumetri effect. If I can spell it, it will appear. There we go. With the layer selected, double click on the effect. It'll automatically apply to the layer. Let's go to basic correction and bring up the contrast a lot, up to the max. Bring up the exposure a little bit. Maybe 0.5, 0.4. Vibrance, let's see if vibrance looks any bit better. If we turn that up. No, I'm going to leave that as is. And I'm going to do the same for the actual video. Grab a lumetri effect for it. I'm going to go to create a basic correction. Crank up the contrast on this a bit, and that is it, guys. So we said we're going to cut off the first frame, a couple of frames as well. Hit B on your keyboard to set the work start area, and Control Shift and X, and that is it. Thanks again for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, please do consider subscribing, and don't forget to smash that like and leave a comment down below. Thanks again. See you in the next video.